Hello and welcome to the Tune Up. I am your host, Sarah Z, and this is the show where we talk about all things mental and physical well being. Today, I want to talk to you guys about an important topic. It is anger, and it's important to me as a woman and as a parent because for a few reasons, but typically I want to remove the taboo around anger, and my goal with this episode is to really empower folks to learn how to make friends with their anger and to use it for the tool that I think anger actually is. And I think that it's important as human beings that we learn how to take care of this really strong, important emotion. And as parents, it's very important and vital that we teach our children how to do that as well. So let's get started. The first thing I want to say right out of the gate is anger is everywhere. Everybody's angry. And it's a normal, natural emotion, just like happiness and joy and sadness. And anger gets a bad rap because typically it's loud. Sometimes it can be seen as aggressive, and when it's not managed well, it can come off kind of scary. There can be physical violence, and that I'm not talking about that. That's mismanaged anger. That's not managed anger at all, actually, if we're really going to call it that. It's anger that has not been taken care of in any way, shape, or form, and it's just coming out as violence. And what I'm talking about, though, is learning how to harness anger in the way that it can be useful to us, because I think it is a useful emotion and it tells us a lot about how we feel in our circumstances and action steps that we can take. And I know for myself, I'm in my mid 40s. I have swallowed anger most of my life. And as a woman, I have been conditioned to be the good girl, and good girls do not get angry, which is absolute bullshit. Of course we get angry. We're humans just like men are, and anger is one of the emotions that we feel when we're triggered. And to condition children to say that they shouldn't have feelings that they are actually having just sets up for disaster and problems. And typically what happens is we feel angry and we want to be good girls, or we want to be good boys. It can happen to little boys too. And we're feeling angry, and all of a sudden we feel like we have to hide it, so we swallow it, which isn't taking care of it. It's just kind of pushing it down, and then it festers, and we try to soothe ourselves with habits that aren't healthy either. I know for me, there was a lot of like stress eating or emotional eating to kind of tamp down the discomfort I felt when I was angry. And instead of just acknowledging that I was angry about something because I wasn't allowed to, I would try to cover it up and I would try to soothe myself. And as a child, your options are pretty limited. You don't know things like breathing techniques or journaling, and unless those are tools that your parents share with you, you're really like, okay, what can I do to take care of this? I can numb myself out by watching a bunch of TV and trying to forget that I'm angry. I can, comfort food eat to try to get the discomfort to go away. And so it leads to a whole bunch of problems and strategies that over time build up to even more problems. That overeating can lead to obesity, can lead to just poor heart health, depending on what you're snacking on all the time. It can lead to the festering, and that the chronic stress of that on our health has been shown to have definite negative impacts, leading to heart disease, heart attacks. And I mean, it's just like, if we had just dealt with it in the moment, it would be over. But instead, we actually carry our anger over the years, and we build up. It's almost like we're walking around with baggage, with luggage that we're lugging around. Whereas if we had just dealt with it in the moment, we could have let it go and moved on, right? So it's really important for us to learn how to take care of our anger in a healthy, productive way that doesn't hurt other people, doesn't hurt ourselves, because, especially when we're feeling angry and we have that knee jerk response, sometimes we want to react aggressively. Sometimes we want to yell, scream, stamp our feet. I know when my boys were little, and even now as they get older, sometimes the impulse is to use their body, push, to hit, to, because they don't know what else to do. The emotion is so intense, and the impulse is to push that away and to push the person away that is making you angry. But really, it's misplaced. They aren't making you angry. You are having anger over the situation, right? But as a child, you don't get that. Um, and so it's really important that we learn how to take care of it in a way that is healthy for us and for the other person, right? And the other thing is when we're conditioned to be the good girl or the good boy, and we look to just deny our anger, it leads us to stay in situations that aren't great for us. I know for myself, 3 years ago, I was given a really, in my mind, a step up, a promotion at work. And, I got a great title. I got a big boost in my salary. But what I also got on top of that was then a 2-hour commute, because I had to then go into a different office. And then I also had terrible hours. I was working about between 60 and 70 hours a week on top of having to commute on top of it. And I have two small children. And so I have a family that is a full-time family, and then I have this job that was more than a full-time job, and it was horrible. The Just the stress of it, and the way, management dealt with the whole company structure. In short, it wasn't the right position for me, and I knew it shortly after I took the job. I took it in January. By March, I'm like, okay, I got to give notice. This isn't for me. And I didn't. I swallowed it. I was like, oh, they saw something in me. They gave me this great opportunity. Who am I to give it back? Who am I to say this isn't right for me? And then the part of me that is afraid, like the scarcity kicked in, like, oh, you're making the most money you've ever made. If you give up this job, you may not be able to find another job. So there was a lot of fear that kept me in the position that I'm like, oh, I can't walk away from this. I don't have another job lined up. I may not be able to find something else. And so I swallowed it. I knew it wasn't right for me. I knew it wasn't working for me or my family, but I kept with it, because I'm like, okay, I'm too afraid to leave. And so what happened is, fast forward 6 weeks, I'm angry all the frickin' time. I mean, hair trigger, forget that. I was a bolstering, like, live wire of anger. I was snapping at my kids. I was snapping at my husband. I was short with people at work because I didn't want to deal. And the anger, when I looked at it, it was a map. It was saying, girl, this is the time. Like, this is not the situation for you. This is not the job for you. You've got to handle this. And truthfully, I'm going to be honest, I didn't walk away from it. Circumstances, I mean, ultimately I did about 6 months later, but I hung in. And what happened is life gave me some real circumstances that made it impossible for me to keep the job. And so I ended up resigning 6 months later. But my health was poor. I had strained the relationship between my husband and I. I had to kind of reparent my kids, and walk back some of that behavior, because they see us, how we're acting, and they model it. So I was modeling some really poor behavior to my own children. And it was a bad situation. And all along, that anger, if I had just stopped and said, okay, what am I angry about? I'm angry about the fact that I have this fear of leaving. I have I have a situation that just isn't working for me. And the anger is pointing to for me to go. And I need to just, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to it, but it's also okay to walk away, right? And so in this case, anger is our best friend, right? It's the thing saying, hey, this job isn't for you. This partner isn't for you. You need to ditch the dude, Vanessa. I mean, he sucks, right? Like, anger is that friend if we let it. And I want to share a little bit of a truth bomb with you guys that really was kind of like a come to Jesus wake up call for me. And that was when I was researching anger for this episode. I found that neuroscientists who study anger and emotions found that anger, the feeling of anger, typically only lasts about 90 seconds. So I want you to think about that the last time you were angry and how long it took for you to go from that initial trigger that made you feel angry to when you gave it up, to when you let it go. And I'm here to tell you, I'm the first one to tell you, it was a hell of a lot longer than 90 seconds. And I'm so embarrassed because I have wasted days of my life feeling angry, right? Because ultimately, anger only lasts 90 seconds. The rest of the time, we're keeping it alive, right? We're treating it like the scab that hasn't quite healed yet. We're picking it, right? And how do we do that? We relive it in our head and we tell ourselves, oh, they shouldn't have treated us that way. They shouldn't have said that to us. I shouldn't be in this situation. Things should be easier. And we get stuck on how things shouldn't be. Like we're arguing against reality, right? We're like saying, oh, life shouldn't be like it shouldn't be how it is. And that, I mean, that's like a no win game, right there. You're arguing against reality. And you can do that all day. I have done that all day. It's so, I mean, I'm so embarrassed, but it's true. I'm a fester queen. Um, so don't worry if you do that yourself. Just know that I'm festering because I like to do things 110%. So if you're festering for like 4 hours, don't worry. I've got you beat. I'm probably festering for like 6. So, you can don't beat yourself up about it. And we typically get stuck on how we were wronged and how we shouldn't be wronged and wrong. And we miss the message. And ultimately, the message is anger. There's a trigger there. We've been triggered about something. And when we're triggered, if we can catch it soon after the trigger, anger is actually pointing us towards something. And it's either something we need to do, right? In my case, it was I really needed to let go of my job. It wasn't right for me. It wasn't right for my family. I needed to let it go. Or it's something that we need to take action on. Again, walking away from a job, walking away from a relationship that isn't working, saying no when what you meant when you've already said yes. I can't tell you, I was asked to be on the PTA board and I knew I didn't have time for it. And I said yes because I wanted to be seen as that kind of mom who does everything and anything for her child. And yes, I'll be on the PTA board, but I knew that I should have said no because I didn't have time. And every time I went to a meeting and every time I was asked to do something and add something to my already full plate, anger and resentment just bubbled up. And the action I needed to take was actually saying no. And something and that leads me to sometimes it's something you need to step back from. And ultimately that's where, they ask for a year commitment at our PTA, but then there's kind of an unspoken, but you should really stay for 2 years. And I did step back after my year. I was like, look, I've done my year. That's the commitment. And I know you'd like me to stay on for 2, but I just don't have the time. And I needed that. It was such a weight off when I did that. And that like once a month anger fest that I had and the festering and the upset that I had was gone because I maybe am not the woman that gives 110% and does anything and everything for her kid, but ultimately, do I have to be on the PTA? You really start to have to when you start to get angry, you really have to examine what's important and what is the most authentic and healthy for you. And it's going to be different than somebody else. And you have to be okay with that sometimes the path you take is going to diverge from the folks that you know and love and admire. And, sometimes anger really is uncovering something from our past that we need to heal from. Sometimes we're getting triggered by, I know that sometimes something that triggers me, my husband is like, why are you angry about that? And the truth is, because it's bringing up a situation that mimics something from my childhood, and those childhood wounds, man, they're deep, right? And so sometimes when we're angry, it's not even anger from real time. It's generational sometimes, anger that we've inherited from our grandparents, from our parents. But if we don't ever examine that, if we don't ever take the time to ask the question, like, what am I really angry about? What is this telling me? Then we're never going to learn from it. And we're only going to react to it. And then as parents, we're only modeling being reactive to it. And then we're passing it down to our kids. And it never gets resolved. It never gets disrupted. It never gets healed from. And it never gets dropped. So the baggage just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're still trying to slog through life. But now we have 50 bags instead of one knapsack. And then we're going to pass that luggage to our kids, who through the course of their life, if they don't have the tools, are going to start adding their own baggage. I mean, it's just like, it's a shit show. And it's the reason people feel so dysfunctional. It's because they don't know how to function within their own emotional landscape, right? And so ultimately, anger is a very useful freaking tool. When I was in my early 20s, the very first car I bought on my own without my parents' help was an 88 Jeep Wrangler. And I bought it, gosh, when was that? 98. So it was already 10 years old. I forget how many miles on it, but it was a lot. And man, that thing was pretty. It was beautiful, like shiny black, had beautiful chrome, huge wheels. It had the top, you could take the top off. I loved that car, but it was a beast and a half. That thing was breaking down all the freaking time. And usually when it would break down, there would usually be some sort of loud sound or terrible sound that kind of accompanied it. It would be like shrieking or like gurgling or just kind of hissing. I mean, the sounds that came out of that engine, I'm like, holy shit, my car is possessed. It's like rattling. It sounds like it's about to, like all the wheels are about to fall off. And that's what your anger is, right? Anger it can be loud. The feelings are intense. And they're pointing, they're like that engine where it's like, nope, something's wrong. Whoop, 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 something's wrong. Rattle, 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 rattle. And the intensity of it is by design, I think, because it's ultimately, these are the things we got to take care of, folks. That's why it's so intense. It's because this is the important stuff that we need to take care of, that we need to look at, that we need to examine, that we need to walk away from, that we need to walk towards. Anger really is a necessary emotion. So the next time anger arises, what's the knee jerk? The knee jerk is to yell. The knee jerk is to scream, to stomp our feet, to flail our arms, to walk away, to slam the door, to throw the thing. That's the knee jerk. That's the easy. And as satisfying as it may be in that second, typically those behaviors strain relationships with other people and ourselves, because we're not acting in ways that we want to be. We are not being the humans that we want to be. And so, and this is a journey, folks. I'm not saying that you're going to try this technique and next week you're going to be like, I am the queen of anger. I no longer yell. I no longer stomp my feet. I am just cool, calm, and collected. It just doesn't happen that way, dudes. It is a journey. It's an evolution. It is a trying things on, and it is you're going to make mistakes, but that's okay. We're human. Life is messy. We're messy. That's okay. But what I want to take away from, I want to stop people from swallowing it. I want to stop people from repressing it and pushing it down. I want to stop people from, mistreating themselves in some half-hearted attempt to kind of soothe themselves. What I'd really love is for you guys to get curious about it. And so the next time you're feeling angry, I want you to take a breath and take a break. And I do this with my kids when my anger is triggered, and it's not all the time. Sometimes I still react, I'm going to be honest. But sometimes when they're pushing back and they've pushed a button that makes me angry, I'll say, "Yup, I'm going to walk away for a second. Mommy needs to get a little bit of space. Just give me a second." And I'll leave the room, or I'll leave the car. I'll kind of pull the car over and I'll say, "I'll be right back," and I'll just go step. And I take a few breaths and I ask myself, what is this about? What am I really angry about? What is my anger pointing me towards? What is my anger pointing me to step back from? And I try to come at it in a space of curiosity, and I almost like I'm making friends with it. I shared that Rumi poem in the last episode about making friends with all the emotions that come into your guest house, which is our minds. And I really feel that anger is one that most people do not want to invite in because they're afraid. They're afraid of how they're going to react. And the truth is, we know the worst reaction, right? The worst reaction is getting violent. The worst reaction is hurting someone else. But I think those over-the-top reactions come from a lifetime of not managing your anger well, or just trying to bury it deep to the point where it's like you're like a ticking time bomb. It's like tick, 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 tick. When is this anger going to explode? And so we need to learn how to take care of it, and it's a lifelong caretaking, right? And with kids, as parents, I know when my kids are angry, especially if we're out in public, my knee-jerk response is to get them to shut up, to get them to be quiet, to get them to not calm down, but just be less, right? Because I don't want a scene. I don't want to feel embarrassed, even though half the time we're out in public where we're in front of people that I will never in my life see again. And so when we shut them down in those moments because it's loud and because it's making us uncomfortable, we're teaching them to repress. We're teaching them that someone else's opinion of us, or someone else, how they perceive us, is more important than taking care of their emotions. And so as uncomfortable as it is, and I'm not saying, you stand there in the middle of the Target and let your kid have a meltdown. Absolutely, take them out of the store, but make it be clear to them that you're not taking them out of the store as a punitive, but as let's get to the bottom of this, buddy. Like, I see you're melting down here. You're angry. Let's go to the car. Let's get to the bottom of this. What's going on? So you can't take your kids' anger personally. It's not personal. And we've got to model it. Like, a lot of times I know for me and my husband, because my kids can create such volume when they're angry, I typically, or not typically, not anymore, but I used to meet their volume with my own volume. And so all we're doing is reinforcing that this is the way you should act when you're angry. So when they're yelling and you meet their yelling with yelling, you're just like, yep, this is what we do when we're angry, we yell. And it's so hard to break out of that habit. It's so hard. It's so hard because it's so easy. You just yell back. Heck, half the time, Because I know I'm a trained singer. I've got good breath control. I can meet your level of volume and I can raise it 10, right? Like I can really bring the house down with my volume. So it's hard. It is hard. I'm not going to tell you it's not going to be it's not going to be easy, but it is simple to learn. It's simple to learn. And so we need to learn to how to model taking care of their anger. And the first step is don't take your child's anger personally. They are struggling with something. They have been triggered. Put yourself in their shoes. You know what it's like to be triggered. It's really freaking uncomfortable. And they don't have the vocabulary to express. Half the time they don't even know they're angry. They just feel the intensity in their bodies and they want to react against it, right? And so you need to model getting curious. Okay, bud, I see you're angry. I see you're struggling. What's that about? What are you feeling? What happened? Um, and so through directed questioning, you start to give them vocabulary. It's like, okay, so when your brother threw your shoe on the floor, that made you angry. And then they can start to say, oh, yes, I felt angry when that happened. Okay, well, why did that make you feel angry? What do you think, what was that about? Like what made, and you take them through and you start to give them tools. Like whether it's deep breathing. I know my kids, when they're very angry, I try not to have them do deep breathing, and because when I tell them to take a deep breath, what they do is they take the inhale and then they use the exhale to shout, right? So it can kind of come back at you when you're like, okay, take a deep breath. Let's take a deep breath. They're like, I'm going to yell at you because I'm angry now. And so then you're like, oh my God. That isn't quite what I had in mind, dude, but okay. So that can kind of backfire, but it depends on your kid. Try it out. It may help. So sometimes deep breathing helps. But what for my kids, because it's so uncomfortable in their bodies, the feeling of anger, it's like so inflamed. They need to literally shake it out. So I have them shake out their arms, shake out their hands. And so I do it with them and I'm like, okay, we're going to shake out our arms, then shake out your hands. Now shake out your legs, shake out your feet. And we shake out our body for a good 15 to 30 seconds, and then we still, we're still talking it through, like, okay, what's that anger about? How do you, that hurt your feeling that he threw your shoe? Well, rather than screaming at him, he didn't know that that was going to trigger you. Sometimes he does, but sometimes he doesn't. What's another way you could have reacted? What's a different way you could have come at it to get ultimately what you want, which is your brother respecting your things, because you felt disrespected. You felt disrespected when he threw your shoe. And so you try to help them uncover what their anger is showing them, because anger is a map. It's showing them something, whether it's feelings of hurt feelings, feelings of sadness, feelings of disconnection, feelings of disrespect, whatever it is. It's the map. It's the starting point on the map, and it's up to us to start to uncover and do the digging to get to the buried treasure. Or if we want to come back to my Jeep, we got to pop the hood and we got to kind of take out the pieces of the meltdown, the trigger, the emotion, the feelings underneath, to figure out what's causing the rattle, right? So we have to give a little emotional tune up when we're triggered with our anger. But ultimately, it takes practice. It takes practice in our relationships, and it's not, I know it's sometimes satisfying to tell somebody off, right? Or to say, just F you, like they're, especially when you're out and about and someone triggers you and you're just like, F off, man. Like feels very satisfying. But ultimately, that satisfaction is very shallow. And, ultimately, if you want to feel just more of an even keeled, just contentment, you're going to really want to deal with your anger and learn how to take care of it so that you aren't triggered by people all the time, because people are going to do things that can piss you off all the time. I mean, I live in LA and traffic alone is enough to be enraging. But you know, it's something to make friends with, it's something to get curious about, it's something to take care of. And we need more people talking about anger as a tool, and getting curious, like, oh, I'm angry, what's this about? And so ultimately, I hope this encourages you, I hope this helps, and I hope it inspires you to make friends with your anger and empowers you to use it for the map that it can be. I did create a little worksheet that I like to use with my kiddos. I will link to it in the description so you can download it for your kids or use it yourself. I mean, especially if you're just starting this work of kind of learning how to take care of your emotions, and trying new techniques on caretaking yourself, it could be a useful tool. So I will link to that as well, and keep me posted on your journey. Let me know what works, what doesn't work. I'm always down to learn, um, and grow myself, because I think that's important as human beings, because I want to be a pretty kick-ass human being, and I think that starts with letting go of some of the conditioning that I had growing up, and really empowering myself in we would I mean, ultimately we wouldn't have been given anger if we weren't meant to use it in some way, in some productive, proactive way. And I think that this is the start, this is the first level. So I hope this helps. I will talk to y'all next time, and yeah, have great weeks, people. Bye.